What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? Go ahead, take a seat, hit that like button. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into this. Part two and part three of the Quiet on the Set, the Nickelodeon documentary. Um, we're about to get into the things of the things of the things. On my main channel, this is um a members only chat on my main channel, but if you want to chat freely, please go over to the ReallyBTV reviews channel and you can chat freely there. You do not have to become a member on this channel in order to join the conversation. You just have to go over to the other channel and give me a nice subscribe. And Tracy has dropped the link in the channel and I will pin it. Thank you, Tracy. I'm going to go ahead and pin it. Wait a minute. What I have to do? Oh, my dumb butt. Never mind. Hold on. Um, so let's get into it. Also, El Teddy will be doing an open panel at 8 o'clock on his channel. So if you guys want to join the conversation and want to be a part of the conversation, make sure you guys are going to be at El Teddy's house um, at 8 o'clock tonight. And he will be dropping a link. So you guys, he will be having a panel discussion so you guys can join the conversation. But let's get into part two. This part two gets kind of heavy, you guys. So trigger warning right now, sensitive content, because part two does get a little deep. All right, all right. Sorry. Okay. Okay. All right, you guys, let's get into it. So we left off with the first half. I'm going to come on camera in a second. Give me a second. I'm trying to get my life together. All right, sorry about that. So we left off with Cody Bell. Again, I need to preface you guys that this is not my time period. I mean, not Cody Bell, Drake Bell. I'm sorry, I called the baby Cody. Drake Bell is where we left off. Now, Drake Bell started, they start off with kind of giving us a background on Drake Bell. He was a child star. You know, his dad got him in the business. He wanted to be a child star. They talked about how he had little parts in like Jerry Maguire and Seinfeld and stuff like that. And then he landed a part on The Amanda Show, which eventually evolved into him having his own spinoff show with, is it Drake and Jody or Drake and Cody? Brian Beck, who we met on the last episode, was a dialogue / acting coach who became friends with Drake and his dad. Now, Daddy said, listen, I ain't never trusted him, okay? I never trusted him. I always had a side eye on him the whole time. They said that, you know, he was cool. Drake and Josh, thank you, y'all. Drake and Josh, my bad. They said he was cool with people on the set. You know, everybody liked him kind of thing. And he would have these parties at his house and everybody would be there. They said everybody would be there, the parents, the people from the show, the cast, and all of that. So nobody really thought anything nefarious about that because, you know, everybody was there and everybody was welcome and everybody was invited and they would all have a good time. Things started getting a little weird when he started inviting Drake to do things like go to Disney World and things like that. And his dad said he started noticing that Peck was paying a little too much attention to Drake, on set with wardrobe, touching him a little too much, lingering, And I thought it was very interesting. They showed a clip of Brian Beck working on Growing Pains. Now, again, Growing Pains is my generation. I remember Growing Pains. And again, Growing Pains was one of those family sitcoms that came out in response to the Cosby Show. A lot of family sitcoms, white and black, came out responding to the Cosby Show. And Growing Pains was one of those shows. For those who don't know, it was about a good old, middle class, upper middle class white family. I believe they were in Connecticut. They had the oldest son, Mike, who was like, the wild child. He was sort of like the Tom Hanks from Risky Business character. They had the middle daughter who was like the nerd. She was her sister was Miss Gold. Her last name was Gold. Missy Gold was her sister, and Missy Gold was on Benson. If y'all don't know about Benson, I need y'all to go find out about Benson. Benson is probably one of my favorite sitcoms of all time. I love Benson. And then they had a younger son. Somewhere, the show was very popular for a few years. Somewhere down the line, Kirk Cameron, who is Candace Cameron's brother, he became like Tracy Gold. Thank you. It was Missy Gold and Tracy Gold. Thank you. Somewhere down the line, Kirk Cameron became like a born-again Christian, and he no longer wanted to play the character of Mike. He no longer wanted to be like the wild child and the misfit. He was like, that's just not a good image. We should be showing images of, kids obeying their parents, and that's what God would want. And so they basically matured Mike. I think he ended up getting married and stuff like that. And so they brought on Leonardo DiCaprio. Of course, this was before he became a star. This was his first really big break. They brought on Leonardo DiCaprio, and he sort of was like the cousin. Y'all know how they always bring a cousin on these sitcoms when they need to bring a new character. So I think he was like, I don't remember exactly, but either he was like a homeless child that they became friends with, or a cousin that needed a mama, something. But Leonardo DiCaprio came onto the show, like maybe the last 2 seasons of the show. And of course, he was young and he was cute. And, it was like, who is that? Well, Brian Peck obviously worked on Growing Pains, which we're going to see the connection to Growing Pains. Right. Leo was the cousin Pam of Growing Pains. Exactly. We find out later on that there was a connection. We'll get to that when we get to the court case. But he was a street kid. Thank you, Marnie. Leo played Lucas Street Kid. Thank you. I knew it was something about him being on homeless or something like that. I knew that was connected. Okay, Leo was. Thank you. Thank you so much, Marnie. Remember they had him sleeping in like the alcove under the steps at first. Remember? Anyway, then I think Mike ended up moving to they made a house out of the garage or something, and then he moved into Mike's room. So I'm trying to remember all these things, but anyway, I'm going way left. Anyway, but I thought it was interesting that they showed old footage of him touching Leonardo DiCaprio. And Drake's dad said, just like that. He used to touch my son just like that. And you could see in that footage. Now, I am not insinuating in any way, shape, or form that this man touched Leonardo DiCaprio. I want to be very clear about that. But I did find it interesting that is the footage that they showed. And Drake's dad was like, just like that. I said, oh. Moving on. Hold up. Marnie said, yeah. Marnie, see, I know Marnie remembers. That's why I was trying to see what she said. I know Marnie remembers. Right. So, and again, I want to say it one more time for the people in the back. I am not saying that Leonardo DiCaprio was violated by this man. What I'm saying, though, is they had footage of him working on Growing Pains and him being a little touchy, rubbing Leonardo DiCaprio's arm and rubbing his back and touching, not inappropriately, but maybe just doing a little too much. And Drake's dad said that's the way he was touching my son, and I didn't think it was appropriate. I was like, hold up. He said he would help him put on a shirt. And he was like, he know how to put on a shirt. He don't need you to help him. Like doing unnecessary touching, like, why are you touching him? Like, you're not a wardrobe person. You're not in costume. Like, you're a coach, an acting / dialect coach. So daddy went to production. Daddy went to production and said, something ain't right here. He doing too much. He getting a little too close to my son. I feel some kind of way about this. I need you to keep an eye on that. Well, Brian was in Drake's ear telling him, your daddy ain't a good, you really shouldn't have daddy be your manager. You really should not have your daddy be your manager. And of course, at first, Drake's first response was, why? That's my dad. Why wouldn't he be my manager? What are you talking about? And then he was like, well, nobody on set likes your dad. And people have been talking, and your dad makes people uncomfortable on the set. Like, that could put your job in jeopardy. And then he said, he put he laid the seeds of doubt. He laid the seeds of doubt. And then he went in for the zinger. What's the zinger, y'all? What's the zinger? Your dad's stealing your money. Your dad taking your money. So they brought in these attorneys to do the books, to read over the books. Now they said that there was nothing found. There was no inappropriate things done as it relates to the young man's money. They didn't find any evidence of anything, but again, they said his dad was going against the machine, right? His dad was going against these lawyers that Brian was bringing in, and now Brian was getting into mama's head. Now the parents were divorced at the time, and he was getting into mama's head, saying your husband is, your husband's messing with your son's career, and your husband's taking your son's money, and da 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 da. So Drake went to go stay at his mom's house, right? They said he had been at his mom's house for about a week. And then the mom called Drake's dad and said, Drake doesn't want you to be his manager anymore. And I felt so bad for his dad. He started crying. He was so emotional. But he was like, I want whatever he wants. Like, if he doesn't want me to be his manager anymore, then I'm going to respect his decision. I want what he wants. He said, but I also understood that was also breaking a bond of our relationship as father and son. And it did. They said it drew a wedge between the father and son for many years. Baby, the father told that mama. The father said, look, I'm going to walk away. Because if that's what he wants, I'm not going to stand in his way. He said, but don't you leave my son with that man unattended. Do not let Brian peck around my son unattended. Don't leave him alone with him. Don't let him spend no time alone with him. I'm going to walk away. Okay? If y'all think he can do better with another manager, okay, fine. Let him have another manager. But don't you leave my son alone with that man. And what that damn mama do? Left that boy alone with that man. She started letting the boy go to Disney World. Listen, how many times can you go to Disney World? I mean, damn. Spending the night over this man's house. Listen, y'all, we gonna have a, hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. I usually get some water before I get started. I forgot to go get me some water. Give me a second. I need to go get some water. Hold on, y'all. I'm sorry. My apologies. I need some water. Sorry about that. Can we have a conversation though, y'all? Can we talk for real though? Can we be real for a minute? We need to be real for a minute. Okay? Parents. Drake's mom was a drug addict. I don't know nothing about that. I ain't done no research, but I believe you, Ravine. I know you wouldn't drop nothing in the chat that ain't true. Parents. Y'all, and when I say y'all, I'm not talking about to y'all people in this room because I know my tribe don't do these kinds of things. But I'm just saying in general, I'm just saying over to the people. Y'all got to stop. Y'all have to stop allowing your children to do things when it comes to celebrities or when it comes to getting them a career in the industry when it's something you wouldn't do day to day. Listen, I'm even talking about coaches like basketball, football coaches. It's nowhere in the world why you should allow a grown-ass man or woman to have your child sleeping over some grown-ass man or woman house that don't have no kids in the game. Now, I know some people didn't even let their kids stay over nobody's house that had children. I understand that, and I do. I used to think that people was being a little protective, but I understand it. I get it. I understand it one way or the other. I mean, 100%. Now, my parents wasn't one of them parents. Like, I did sleepovers all the time, but I'm gonna tell you what I never did. I ain't never do no sleepover when my mama and my father didn't know them people. I remember when I got invited to my first slumber party. My mama it was my basketball coach. She was my basketball coach. Her daughter played on the team. It was her daughter's it was her daughter's birthday. And she knew her because she was my coach. You know, they had met or whatever. But my mama was like, well, I got invited, and my mama asked all the questions. She needed to know the who, the what, the when, the where, and the how. Where's this house? Who gonna be there, who not gonna be there, who all is going. And what happened was my best friend at the time was on the basketball team. And so my mama called her mom and was like, are you letting her go? And she was like, yeah, I'm letting her go. I've met the coach. I've been to the house. My mama said, you sure you gonna let her go? And she said, yeah, I'm gonna let her go. My mama said, okay, you gonna let her go, then I'll let her go. And we went together. But my mama already knew that lady, and I was friends. What up, Jamal? Hey, boo. And I was friends. Like I said, we played on the basketball team together, and we also were in the same class at school. So we did know each other. But I promise you, and what happened was we went home that Friday after school. We all went home together. Right? Baby, I think the invitation said that slumber party was over at 4 o'clock. My mama was there at 3:58. Okay. And when I look back on it now, I remember my mama asking me very specific questions. I mean, of course, she didn't say nothing like, did anybody touch you? But she was like, so who was at the house? Oh, okay. You have a good, what did y'all do? Like, my mama was very, very, very curious. Okay. Now, so my parents would let me go and stay at other people's houses. But I promise you, if my coach didn't have no kids, I wouldn't have been over there. I can promise y'all that. I promise y'all, if I said, mommy, coach so-and-so she gonna have a slumber party at her house to celebrate the championship, my mama would have been like, nah, we can go over and have some pizza and some soda, and then we gonna go home, but you ain't spending the night. So, y'all, we gotta stop. We've got to stop changing the rules based on what you think you can get out of it. And I'm just gonna call a thing a thing. There's nowhere in the world that, well, y'all said that the mama was on drugs, so that's another. But it's nowhere in the world that mama would let some random man let their son spend the night over some random man's house. Why would you change the rules now? Why would you change the rules now? Just like I said the other day about that lady with her daughter. Why are you letting a grown-ass man email your child? There's nothing that a grown man needs to talk to my child about. If he wants to stay in touch because he might find some job opportunities in the future, guess what? Here go my email address. Here is my phone number, and you can email me or you can call me if there's an audition. But there's nothing you need to say to my child. You know, that's the one thing, and I understand it's not, maybe that wasn't, I don't know, maybe Drake wouldn't speak on it, but I was curious because Drake never did really talk about his relationship with his mom now or any of that. But let me get back to my notes. I done went left. Y'all know I be going left all the time. I done went left already. Let me get back to my notes. Hold on. Let me get back to my notes. Okay. So, see, I done jumped ahead of y'all remind me, stick to my notes. I done jumped ahead of my notes. When the father first went to production, they flipped it on him. That's the first thing that happened. Before all that other stuff, the first thing they had that happened was they flipped it on the daddy. When he went to production, they were like, well, you know, Brian's gay. So are you homophobic? Do you have a problem with your son being around Brian because he's a gay man? So they tried to flip it on the daddy, which sort of guilted him into not complaining about Brian more. He kind of he was like, okay, no, I'm not homophobic. It ain't got nothing to do with him being gay. So they kind of guilted him into kind of pulling back a little bit, right? Then after that, that's when Brian started getting in his head, okay? That's when, Brian started getting in the boy's head, okay? Let me go back to my notes. See, I went left for a second. Told dad Drake's father shouldn't be his manager. Brian stated, he started coming to his concerts, started becoming more involved in him. Then in 2001, for Drake's 15th birthday party, they had it at Brian's house. Dad started making it hard for Brian to be around. Brian started poisoning. See, I should have stuck with my notes. I jumped all ahead of this. I stuck with my notes. Brian started poisoning Drake against his dad. Told him his dad was stealing his money. No one on the set wants to be around him. Started talking to the mom, getting her head. See how I wrote all these notes and I just jumped ahead of all of that. They audited his books. There was no misappropriation of money, but they said that dad was trying to fight an army. Dad didn't fight, but told the mama, never let him around Brian alone. I wrote that in my notes. Never let him around Brian alone. I wrote that in my notes. Brian started taking him to Disney. See, all this is in my notes. Stayed at his house. Okay, here's where it gets dark. So here's where we're going to switch gears. I'm not being funny at all right now. Drake said one weekend when he was staying at Brian's house, he woke up. He was sleeping on the couch. He woke up and Brian was violating him. He said he woke up to being assaulted. And basically he didn't get into the details, but what he said was, just imagine anything that somebody could do to sexually violate you is what happened to me. He said that the next morning, Brian was so apologetic, said it wouldn't happen again. Drake said that he was ashamed and embarrassed to tell his mom. And he said Brian was so apologetic. Of course, there's always that element of it's my fault, I allowed it to happen kind of thing. He said, I didn't put that in my notes, but he said something else about why he didn't tell his mom. There was something else that stopped him from telling his mom, and I don't remember what it is now. But ultimately, it was the guilt about it, and then the fact that Brian apologized. Me too, Marnie. I'm very disturbed at that as well. When he said the worst thing you could do, but when they showed the police report and they wrote that he was penetrated with foreign objects, I'm wondering if that's sort of along the lines of where he was going. Of course, the sodomy, and the fellatio, the oral, but it was the foreign objects thing is where kind of what I think he was talking about. Um, you know. Wait a minute, hold on. Thank you, Samara. And if he did, he had to wait at his place. That's what it was. Thank you. I knew it was something. He said that he was at Brian's house the next morning. He was like, if I had called my mom, what was I going to do? He was like, of course, this was before the days of Uber and all that. He said, well, I have to sit there and wait for my mom to come in. So, yeah, wait for my mom to come and get me. And then, of course, being on the show and all that kind of stuff. Now, he said that Brian tried to convince the network to let him play his father on the Drake and Josh show, which, of course, thank God that didn't happen. He said that the abuse continued to progress over time, that it continued to get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse over time. And like I said, he just sort of left it at imagine the worst thing, yada, yada, yada. He said it took his girlfriend's mother to figure it out. He said, he had a girlfriend and, the show was doing really well. And he said one weekend he was over his girlfriend's house and Brian, he said they were supposed to go to Disneyland. Like I said, I don't know how many times you can go to Disneyland. I mean, don't get me wrong. I like Disney World myself, but I just wonder how many times you could go. Like, anyway, they were supposed to go to Disneyland and he blew Brian off. And he said Brian was calling him and calling him and calling him and blowing up his phone. He said he wouldn't answer. He wouldn't answer the phone. And Brian just kept calling and calling and calling and calling. And then Brian started calling the girlfriend's house. And of course, these were the days of house phones. So he's calling the house phone. And he just kept calling over and over and over and over and over and over. His girlfriend's mother was Fifi Dobson. Who Fifi Dobson? Is she an actress? I don't know who Fifi Dobson was. Somebody tell me who that is. Like when I say tell me who it is, like was she an actress? Was she on a show or something like that? Y'all tell me who that is. That was the other one, not Brian. Huh? Brian Peck. No, that's the other one, Marnie. Okay, I see what you're saying now. Okay. So finally the mother gave the phone to Drake, like, answer this phone so this fool will stop calling my damn house. She's a singer. I don't know much about. Okay, she's a singer. Okay. So Brian gets on Drake gets on the phone and, he said, I'm in front of my girlfriend, the mama, so I kind of blow it, I kind of play it off like, oh man, I'm sorry. I double booked, but I'm gonna hang out with my girlfriend. I'm gonna hang out over here tonight. And he said Brian kept calling back. Like, wouldn't take no for an answer and kept blowing up the phone. So finally, he said the girlfriend's mother called him into the kitchen and was like, what the hell? Like, what's really going on here? And she's a black punk rock singer. Oh, she black? Oh, okay, Drake. Okay. She black. I had to Google her when we get to the end of this. Okay. So here's where I get a little confusion. I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. Y'all correct me in the chat if I got this out of order in my head. When he told the girlfriend's mama, did she take him to the therapist before she took him to the mama? Can y'all correct that for me? Because I'm gonna tell y'all the truth. I lost it somewhere, but I didn't want to rewind and have to go through it again. So did the grandmama, not the grandma, did the girlfriend's mama take the boy to the therapist first before his mama? Or did he take him to the mama and the mama took him to the therapist? Can y'all clear that for me, please? She called the mama and told them she was taking him to, okay, so then okay, I'm confused. She called the mom and told the mom to take him to therapy. Okay. All right. Okay. But the girlfriend's mother was the one that took him to the therapist, though, right? I'm not okay. Some of y'all not understanding my question. I'm not okay. Maybe I'm not asking it right. Fifi, well, I don't know if that's the girlfriend's mother called the mom and told the mom what was going on and then asked for permission to take the boy to the therapist. Full stop. Is that what happened? Okay. The girlfriend's mama took him but asked for permission. I'm with Abby. I just need, can I get 5 minutes with Drake mama? Maybe 10. Yeah, I was confused. I was confusion. Okay, Miss Woodard said no. She told the mom that she felt like he needed a therapist, but she didn't say why. He never told the girlfriend's mom what was going on. Abby said, I might have to just go back and look. I'm sorry, y'all. I should have rewound it, but I didn't realize that I didn't fully understand until I was halfway done and I didn't feel like rewinding it. He didn't even tell the therapist what was going on either. Okay. So the girlfriend's mama knew something was wrong and that he needed therapy, but she took him to therapy after asking for the mom's permission, but he didn't really confess it. I feel like all roads lead to his mama ain't shit. Can I just say that? I'm sorry. Was that disrespectful? Can I just say that all roads lead to his mama ain't shit? Okay, Quake, thank you. I think Quake, I'm going to agree with Quake and we're going to move on. Quake said, honestly, I don't think he was very clear because it's still very hard for him to talk about. That's why it's not making sense. I'm going to go with what Quake said and we're going to move forward. Okay, I'm going to go with we're going to take that and we're going to move on. Next thing I know, he was talking to the Popo, right? He was talking to the Popo, telling the Popo what was happening. And they got him on tape admitting what he did. And it was funny because they said that he even said, am I being recorded? This what I will never understand. This what I will never understand. When people say, am I being recorded, but they keep talking. If you suspect you being recorded, why would you admit to a crime? If you suspect that you're being recorded, why would you admit to a crime? If I have to ask you, I'm sorry, you recording me? That's enough for me to get off the phone. Matter of fact, I'm not even going to say, are you recording me? If I feel like I have to ask, that's like when you have to ask somebody, are you cheating on me? You know they are. You are, if you either already know they are, or you got a strong, you got a strong enough suspicion that this relationship don't have no trust and you need to move on. It's one of the two. Either you know that person is already cheating on you, or you have a strong enough suspicion that that person is cheating on you and it's time to just move on. Do y'all feel what I'm saying? Do y'all feel what I'm saying? Anyway. So that is where we pick up. So this is where we pick up with the end of the last episode where it hit the news that a coach at Nickelodeon, you know, an acting coach at Nickelodeon was arrested on all of these different charges. I already told y'all the charges. I ain't gonna repeat them. And nobody knew who it was. Now, of course, like, you know, Drake said, of course, these were the days, you know, he was a minor, so his name wasn't mentioned. And most people suspected because he was so close to Brian on set, and everybody knew that they were really close and they spent a lot of time together and that kind of thing. So everybody suspected it anyway. Okay, thank you. Tracy went back and looked. His girlfriend's mom took matters in her own hands. She called the mom and said, I'm taking him to our therapist tomorrow because something is going on and we need to figure it out. Okay. All right, so can I put a pin and go back then? I said I wasn't going to go back, but Tracy went back. Thank you, Tracy. I told y'all she the best showrunner in the land, honey. Tracy went back and got the quote for me. So can we go back to that for a second? I want y'all to raise your hand in the chat and tell me how many of y'all would allow a woman, even if it's good intentions, even with the best of intentions, take your child to a therapist without you being there. Even with the best of intentions. Who is allowing a woman, girlfriend, because let's be clear, they were only 16, 17 years old, okay? So when she's my girlfriend, like it was high school love, okay? Who is allowing some woman to call your house and say, hey, something's going on with your baby. I'm taking him to our family therapist because something ain't right. Again, I reiterate, your mama ain't shit. Moving on. So this is where it converges, you guys, where we pick up with the court case. Now, Drake said he was allowed to keep working because nobody, even if people suspected it was him, nobody outright came to him. He said Dan did actually call him and ask, is it you? And Drake told Dan, yes. And Dan said, you know, all right, you don't need to say anything more. You know, enough said. You don't need to say nothing more. But just know that, you know, I'm here for you, yada, yada, yada. To be clear, Drake has no beef with Dan. To be clear, Drake has no beef with Dan. We'll get back to Dan in a minute. We'll get back to Dan with a minute, okay? Eventually, the case goes to court. And it sounds like Brian had already worked out a plea agreement and he did not have to, there was no actual trial, but there was the sentencing hearing. Drake said when he walked in, and mind you, of course, this was before the days of TMZ and all of that. So there was no paparazzi. Well, I ain't gonna say there was none. He said back then you could sneak in and out. So you could get in and out easily, is I think what he said. So I don't think there was nobody there. But you know, obviously he wasn't a star. You know, it had been about a year since the case, so nobody was probably following the case anymore at that point. And he was able to walk in relatively without anybody noticing him or thinking, well, what the hell is Drake doing here, right? He said he walked into that courtroom and there were so many people on Brian Peck's side. And there weren't hardly anybody on it was just him, his brother. Oh, I'm sorry. See, let me go back to my notes. I'm sorry, y'all. Let me go back to my notes. Okay, girlfriend trying to become dad on the show. Finally told his mom, went to the police, got Brian on the phone, admit what he did. See, this is why I got to stick to my notes. My brain be going left. Okay. Okay. The dad did not know when Drake called his father. He said they were just starting to get to a point where they were working on their relationship and they were getting back to a good place. He called his dad and his dad didn't know it was him. His dad said, I see they finally got that son of a bitch. And this about broke my heart, y'all. When that daddy said, I am so glad he didn't get to you. Baby, my heart broke. My heart broke. I mean, Drake said that in that year, um, he dealt with alcohol and substance abuse, or in that time period, during that time period is when his problems with alcohol and substance abuse started, which we definitely understand. And then he talked about how he wasn't getting any therapy. And I wrote no therapy question mark. Y'all. See, that's why don't let me not get back to my notes, y'all. Y'all, how that baby wasn't in therapy? And I'm looking at everybody. I'm looking at the mama, the daddy, the network, the attorneys. I'm looking at everybody. How that baby wasn't in therapy. I don't understand it. Now, again, I know we're not getting every nook and cranny of this story. And if Drake had said, listen, they tried to get me to go to therapy, but I didn't stick with it. I wouldn't go. I didn't want to talk to nobody. That's fine. But that ain't what he said. He said, well, I wasn't in therapy during this time. Why? Why? I get it. Listen, I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. I get it. There's a lot of guilt and shame, and I get embarrassment. I get all of that. But if the girlfriend mama took him to therapy once, somebody at the very least family therapy. Damn. Especially when he started drinking and doing drugs. But again, I'm sure it's more to that story. I'm sure it goes deeper. Okay. I am, y'all. I'm not, I don't want to make it seem like this is an easy 1-2 answer. I know there's probably layers to this that we're not getting because maybe he doesn't want to get into all the nooks and crannies, and I respect that, right? But I also feel like I just think that sometimes because adults deal with their own guilt, and again, I'm not judging his daddy because I think his daddy tried, but I think his daddy was dealing with his own guilt, and maybe Drake was resistant and they didn't want to push him. Well, he's been through a lot. We're not going to make him. We're not going to, you know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. Um, in October 2004 was the sentencing. All right, I just talked about that. So he pled no contest. So he was allowed to plead no contest, and no contest is not the same as pleading guilty. It's like you're acknowledging you did it, but it doesn't have the same penalty on your record. I'm not an attorney, but like I remember when OJ Simpson had pled no contest to the domestic abuse against Nicole Simpson. So it shows up a certain way. And the man only got 16 months in jail, and then he had to register as a offender. And Drake said, "My only goal, well, not he didn't say my only goal, but he said I felt good in feeling like he would never be able to work with children again, right? Like, okay, he didn't go to jail that long, but at least when he gets out of jail, he'll never ever ever be able to work around kids again." He said, and essentially, I felt like I had put him out of Hollywood because most Hollywood sets have kids, right? Oh, that's not what happened. He took his happy ass over to Disney and was working on the Sweet Life over at Disney when he got out of jail. Now, let me go through some of the names of the people who wrote. So what happened was, we don't know who was in court that day, but we do know who wrote letters of support. James Marsden. Now, James Marsden in his letter wrote that he had known Brian for 14 years. So at that time, that would have meant that he had known Brian since he was a teenager. Taran Kalin, who is also an actor, but would have known Brian when he was a teenager. He wrote in his letter, well, we know mistakes were made. Alan Thicke. Now, Alan Thicke has passed away now, but Alan Thicke was the daddy on Growing Pains. Remember, we already said that Brian worked on the set of Growing Pains. Joanna Kearns was the mama on Growing Pains. She wrote a letter. We're going to get back to Miss Joanna Kearns. Thomas DeSanto, he was a producer on X-Men, the original X-Men movies. He was a producer. Ron Melindy, an actor, again, would have been a child actor when he knew Brian. Will Friedle was an actor on Boy Meets World. Again, would have been a child actor when he first met Brian. Joanna Kearns wrote in her letter that she blamed the victim. She didn't say she blamed the victim, but her language was stuff like, well, I'm sure he was pressured into it and seduced. She has since released a statement saying that when she wrote that letter many years ago, she was given misinformation. And had she known the story, the real story, she would never have written that letter. Bullshit. It was in the paper. Ma'am, this wasn't like a private event and you ain't know nothing about it. It was in the paper. They showed us the paper in the documentary. They showed us the headline. Yeah, tap, tap, tap. They showed us the headlines on the documentary. The man, it was all over the news. Brian Peck went on a smear campaign about Drake with his friends and associates. He said Drake lied about his age and pursued him. Not sure why grown adults chose to believe him. I'm sorry. Thank you, Bat. I'm sorry. How in the world could he have lied about his age when clearly he was on a damn show on Nickelodeon? Like, I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Like, it's not like you didn't know who this person was. Like, he was on fucking Nickelodeon. How did he lie about his age when you literally work on set with him on Nickelodeon every day? What is there to lie about for his age? Child. Then there was another actress. Her name is Kimmy Roberson. Now, we already can't trust Kimmy ass because Kimmy hand wrote her letter to the court. I can't trust you handwriting a letter to the court. But she wrote that he was pressured and pursued by the victim. Then there was Rich and Beth Carell that both worked on the Amanda Show. They wrote a letter and said he was a great guy and they would work with him again. And they were producers on The Sweet Life, where Brian Peck had a job after he got out of jail. Now, once it was exposed, the Disney Channel fired him, obviously, and claimed that, they didn't know. And I wrote in my notes, where was HR? Because how did he was a registered offender? How did you not know? For a children's show, to me, that should be, and I understand that, this was 20 years ago. Well, no, not quite 20 years ago. This was like, I didn't write the year down, but this was after 2014 because that's when he was sentenced. So let's say 2016. So no, I ain't giving them that. But I'm not understanding, like, for a children's show, at the very least, I feel like you would check the registered offenders list. I mean, at the very least. Tracy said, I'm trying to figure out the last time a child pressured me. Okay. And again, here's what I find to be so funny and so interesting. It's funny to me how when you decide you want to blacklist somebody, you want to blacklist a director or blacklist an actress or blacklist an actor, that all it takes is for one person to say, this person is persona non grata, and that goes reverberates throughout all of Hollywood, and it lasts for years and years and years and years. But here's a man that was arrested. It was all over the news. He was convicted, and all of a sudden, everybody got fucking amnesia when he gets out of jail and don't remember that he is a convicted offender. That's what I don't understand. I'm confusion. Let me explain something to y'all. And when I was watching this is where my anger came from. For those of you that are new here, welcome, welcome, welcome. But for my tribe members that have been here and we've talked about these things before, the reason why I get, sometimes I know I've even snapped at people when I feel like you're blaming the victim is because of things like this. Now, here's the thing. I understand and I understand that people lie. I get it. We see people lie all day, every day. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like people don't lie, because they do. But what I am going to say is, unless I have my spidey senses go out off for me not to believe the victim, I'm going to believe the victim until I have a reason not to believe the victim. And this is why. Because now y'all are sitting on the wrong side of history, because you had a friend that you chose to believe over this child who had no reason to lie. And now this documentary comes out, and now everybody want to put out press statements and PR explanations to defend that. Basically, what it boils down to is that you chose to believe your friend over this child. It was the same thing that happened with the Danny Masterson case, and then when he got convicted, and we see all the people who wrote letters. Now everybody got to backpedaling and pussy pop off of the letter they wrote for their friend. Listen, I get it. Your friend is your friend is your friend, but let's understand something. Sometimes your friend is not a good person. Sometimes your friend is a crook. Sometimes your friend is a criminal. Sometimes your friend, unfortunately, can do some terrible things. And we got to stop pretending like these people who come to us as adults and wolves in sheep's clothing can't really be sheep underneath the motherfucking mask. We got to stop. We have to stop. I'm sick of it. And see, I went left again. Let me get back to my notes. Let me get back to my notes. Okay. The Sweet Life and the Life of Zach and Cody. It was 2 shows on the Disney Channel where that man worked on. There was another offender who got hired at Nickelodeon. His name was Ezekiel Chanel. Basically, it sounds like he kidnapped a child, brought him onto the premises of Nickelodeon where he worked, and violated that child again. That man was already a convicted offender. How he got a job working with kids? Now, granted, he brought a child from somewhere else onto the lot, but that's not the point. How did he get a job at Nickelodeon? All right. We get ready to switch gears. We get ready to go back to Dan. Okay. Let's cleanse our palate, as El Teddy would say. And do not forget, El Teddy is doing a panel at 8 o'clock. So y'all make sure y'all get over to El Teddy's house, where he's going to have a panel discussion. And I believe he's going to open the panel up at one point, so you guys can come up if you want to share your thoughts. We're going back. Oh, that's a good question, Ms. Wilbers. Why was he so comfortable bringing the child there? Well, it is. It was the Joanna Carnes lady saying something along the lines of, he must have enticed and tempted him in order for that to happen. It's the same BS they say about women when they come forward about SA. Exactly. So let's get back to this. So they said that pretty much this incident happened and life went on as usual down to the Nickelodeon. Dan, they said his power grows. He continues to create successful shows down to the Nickelodeon, including iCarly, which basically is like a ratings blockbuster, Zoe 101, Victorious show. Okay. They showed a clip of the writer's room for iCarly, and I thought it was interesting that it was all men. When they showed the clip, they said that Dan was like always a tech guy, and so he was sort of on the forefront of this vlogging, behind the scenes, putting behind the scenes footage on social media, you know, your Twitter, your YouTube, stuff like that. And so that was sort of breaking edge at the time. And they showed footage of the writer's room for iCarly, and I just noticed that it was all men. It just took me back to the first episode when we talked about the two women who were writers for the Amanda show. They talked about Zoe 101 and a lot of the over sexual jokes. You know, we saw the squirt on the face. We talked about that. Slapping girls on the side of the face with sausages. The having them in bikinis or halter tops, you know, making boob jokes. You know, they talked about all those different things. Then they talked about Ariana Grande, and again, him being on the forefront of this behind the scene footage stuff. And they showed these clips of Ariana Grande doing some of the most cringy, overly sexual things. We talked about her pouring the water over her body and her doing this with a potato, talking about, come on, give me that juice. Come on, give me that juice. Like, just things that you look back now and be like, how ain't nobody else see this? You know what I mean? Clearly the kids, like one of the girls on the set was like, I didn't get it at the time. But one of the boys, when they squirted the stuff on Spears, not Britney Spears, but her sister, on her face, one of the boys said, "Ooh, that's a cum shot." And one of the girls was like, I didn't even know what a cum shot was until I got older. And I was like, oh. Jamie Lynn, thank you. Dan was still getting massages on the set. They said everybody knew from New York to LA, all of the executives, everybody knew about his behavior on set. He was disrespectful. He was rude. He would berate people, embarrass people, threaten people, fire people on the spot. You know, all the things that we learned about him in the first episode was probably, you know, magnified times 10, because now he's been very successful. And it's almost like, who gonna stop me, boo? Who gonna check me, boo? You know, like who gonna check me, kind of thing. Oh, all that stuff behind the scenes, but they want to cancel Zoe 101 because she got pregnant, right? Ain't that interesting? At the 2014 Kids Choice Awards, he was Dan was honored with a Lifetime Achievement Award, and all of the former stars and current stars came up to give him his flowers. But they said noticeably missing was a woman by the name of Jeanette McCurdy, who you guys told me about when we did the first review, the one that wrote the book about her being glad her mom was dead. Now, when the show, I remember this summer it making the rounds. I remember her being on like The View and all these different places. And honestly, at the time, I wasn't really interested because I didn't know what it was about. But now I do want to read it. I think I'm going to add it to my book list because I want to read this now. But she was a child star under Dan. Under Dan, she was on a couple of shows on Nickelodeon, and she did not mention Dan by name in her book, but she talked about a TV creator, a big time executive TV creator that she worked for. Well, it don't take a rocket scientist to figure it out if that's the main place she worked. But she spoke to the abuse. She was on Sam and Kate. And she spoke to how abusive and disrespectful and everything he was to her and to the people on the show and everything else. There was another internal investigation, which still did not result in Dan being fired. However, he was instructed to stay off the set, and he was no longer on set for his shows. He had to just sort of give notes from his office. Now, he said he voluntarily chose to do that, but of course, that ain't what the people said. The people said you was told you couldn't bring your ass back down here. After that, things start to change in 2017. Things start to change because of the Me Too movement, where, obviously is bringing a closer scrutiny to things that are happening in the workplace, women coming forward, and women started calling the union and things like that on Dan and complaining. One woman who didn't show her face, but she worked on set. I think she worked in the costume department. And she said when she called the union was like, oh, yeah, we've been getting these calls. There was another investigation where Dan was ultimately fired. Now, again, Dan tried to make it seem like it was, I need to take a break. I need to reset. I need to, take some time off. But, baby, they said Nickelodeon changed the locks. They said it was like a $7 million buyout, and Nickelodeon changed the locks. Like, no ma'am, no sir, no Pam. You're not. That's it. That's a wrap. You ain't coming back. They said it's been a long time since Dan has created a TV show. He wants to make a comeback, but I think this has put whatever. If there wasn't already a nail in his coffin, baby, this documentary put one there. Now, here's what I'm going to say, and I think Gabby has said this in the chat a couple of times. They allude to inappropriate behavior with Dan, especially in the first episode. Maybe not so much in the second episode, but they allude to it, but they do not come out and say it. Probably because no one else has said anything about Dan having inappropriate behavior with anybody. They just speak to his jokes being inappropriate, his behavior being inappropriate. They speak to him being a misogynist, being a sexist, maybe even borderline racist. Some things happen that, are questionable as far as racism is concerned. But nobody has come forward to make any definitive accusations. And so, the documentary had to be responsible and not put that out there, right? Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say. I don't really understand AI all like that. I really don't. I'm not going to pretend like I get it. I don't understand it. I've been having to deal with AI as it relates to my school, at work, with school, but I don't understand AI like that. But here's what I do know. I think at this point, if we can use AI technology and just use AI for kids in any movie or TV shows, let's just do that from now on. Because there are just way too many instances where kid actors and actresses just don't make it. Right? I mean, when we look at the Keisha Knight Pulliams of the world, if the worst thing we can say about Keisha Knight Pulliam is that she got pregnant by a no good Igga that dogged her, well, so what? I mean, that's the worst thing. I think that's the worst thing we could say about Keisha Knight Pulliam. Okay, she got up with Ed Reed, had a baby by him, and he dogged her out. But now she done found her love, and she done had another baby, and she is living la vida loca. Okay. if the worst thing we could say about Tempest Bledsoe is that she married Ron from a different world, child, we ain't heard nothing about them. I didn't even know they were still married until they went on this different world tour. Baby, she is living her best life, okay? But for every Tempest Bledsoe, for every Keisha Knight poem, I can give you 10 of the other side, right? You know what I'm saying? Now, I will say this. I think even not that Nick did anything, but his name is not mentioned once in the documentary. Nope, it's not. Raven, if the worst thing we could say about Raven Simone is that when she was on The View, she thought Africa was a country. Girl, okay, girl. Okay, girl. Okay, girl. Honestly, for as much as we can say about Bill Cosby and how he treated adults, clearly he did something right when it came to the kids on the show. That's all I'm gonna say. Okay. Now we might not be able to say no great things about how he treated the women, but I mean, when you look at all of the Cosby kids, I mean, even Lisa Bonet. If the worst thing we could say about Lisa Bonet is that she fell in love and had a baby, okay, girl. We ain't heard about Lisa Bonet out here doing drugs and getting DUIs and stuff, you know. But when I think about like for example, when I think about the cast of A Different Strokes, all three of them kids was fucked up. All three of those kids was fucked up. Dana Plato, Ty Bridges, Gary Coleman. Who said that, Marnie? What Cosby kid said that? Hold on. What Cosby kid said something bad about Bill? But honestly, y'all, I just feel like when you look at all of these child actors who just didn't make it, Lisa Bonet. Well, you know, Lisa Bonet and Bill Cosby never got along. They never got along. So I could see what she felt weird about around him. But remember, she was older too, and maybe she saw some things. But they never got along. I just, you know, again, I mean, we know about the little girl. I mean, even going all the way back to the child actors of the 1950s, right? Even going back to the child actors of the 1950s. You know, Kim Fields is good because I don't want to make this a race thing, but Kim Fields, I think, is good because of her mom and her mom being a strong, first of all, her mom being in the industry, but also because of her mom being a strong kid. I mean, a strong adult and an advocate for her. But when you hear Kim Fields tell her stories, Kim Fields she's got trauma. She's got trauma as it relates around her self-image, around her weight. They used to call the facts of life, they used to call them the fats of life. Because all of the girls, they talked about how all the girls had weight issues. And so all of them dealt with that, being scrutinized, Kim Fields having to have braces and, so now is it on the same level as being violated? No, but they've all dealt with that trauma. They've all dealt with that trauma. When you think back on, like I said, the child stars from the 1950s, I remember, I want to say it was a Sally Jesse Raphael show back in the day where she had like the daughter from the Addams Family. She ended up doing porn. They had the kid from Father Knows Best. They had the guy from Leave It to Beaver, and all of them were like drunks or drug addicts, or like all of them went through so much. We know about the little girl from Family Matters. She went on and did. She ended up doing porn. Yeah, Judy Garland. Oh my gosh. Elizabeth Taylor too. Elizabeth Taylor, if y'all go look at her story, again, if the worst thing we could say, about Elizabeth Taylor, oh yeah, the child Lord Orlando Brown, child Lord Orlando Brown. And again, I just have to say, like, oh, Drew Barrymore, absolutely. Poor, you know what though? But poor Drew Barrymore didn't stand a chance because her mama was dysfunctional as fuck. I think Drew Barrymore would have been in trouble had she never even become a celebrity because her family, her family are in the business. I mean, there's a theater named after her grandfather in New York, or her father. Her father was an alcoholic. Drew Barrymore's father was an alcoholic. I think Drew Barrymore would have been fucked up either way. When you hear her story and you hear about her mom, I mean, her mom had her in Studio 54. Like, I think Drew Barrymore would have been fucked up. Lindsay Lohan. Like, we could flood the chat. We could flood the chat. So at this point, I just don't know, y'all. It's just it's sad. Because for so many kids, they are the ticket out for their family. For so many kids, they are the ticket out for their family. But on the flip side, hey Pat, but on the flip side, at what cost? Yeah, Drew Barrymore was in rehab, I think, before she was 13. Child, Brooke Shields' mama tricked her out. I said I wanted to review that documentary on Brooke Shields. I got to go back and look at that. Child. Anyway, you guys, let me go ahead and get off of here. That was pretty much how it ended. And I salute him for coming down here and telling his story. I'm sure that wasn't easy. He said that's the first time he's told his story outside of, like, the criminal case. He said he hadn't even, told a lot to his therapy. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna keep praying for them. Looks like him and his dad have definitely mended their relationship. He ain't say nothing about his mama. I ain't see his mama, so I don't know what the deal is with that. But I want to whoop her ass myself. Okay. Oh yeah, Corey Feldman, definitely. I mean, they talked about Aaron Carter, all of that. So don't forget, at 8:00, y'all can head over to El Teddy's if y'all want to keep this conversation going. Just read, she developed a drinking problem at the age of 11, became addicted to cocaine at 12, was put into rehab for attempted suicide at 13. You have to be, I mean, you can't change the rules because now you're in Hollywood, right? The same things that you would not allow to happen to your child, you have to be vigilant and keep an eye on them. And you have to, and listen, and you have to be okay with being called the bitch. Because I remember Brandy's mom. Now, we say a lot of things about Miss Norwood and that wig she's been wearing for 30 years, but they said Brandy's mom did not play. I remember when Brandy did her first album, her mother wouldn't allow her to wear, she couldn't wear crop tops. She couldn't show her belly. And I think her skirts couldn't be too short. I forgot. I don't know if it was above the knee or not, but I remember them saying that. And I remember her mother saying, like, her mother had to approve all of the songs, right? But I think sometimes you got to be okay with being difficult. That young man who his mother spoke up on the first part, and he said he sort of blamed his mom, but in hindsight, I'm sure he thanks his mom. In hindsight, but in the moment, you got to just kind of be okay with that. Somebody earlier said Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen. No, Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen are some dysfunctional ass kids. I just think because they're so rich and their parents did right by them as far as their money, and they've been very successful in business, people overlook that shit. Mary Kate and Ashley Olsen, it's something wrong with them girls. They ain't right. First of all, they look anorexic as fuck. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying they look it, okay? They've been smoking cigarettes since they was 15, okay? One of them is married to, like, somebody that's like 30 years older than her, or was married to somebody that's like 30 years old. Them girls ain't right. They just rich and they quiet. They rich and quiet. They just don't be out here all in the front. You know, they're very private. They're very private. So people don't see them because they don't party. You know, they don't be out there like that. So I think a lot of people allow themselves to forget. But no, something ain't right. Them girls ain't right. Gabby. Okay, I don't know that to be true, so I'm not repeating that. Yeah, one of them is married to an old man. Macaulay Culkin had issues. Sure did. Macaulay Culkin had issues. Hey, El Teddy, I told the people to meet you at your house at 8:00. Um, but yeah, I mean, we've got some success stories, but for every one success story, baby, we got 20 that wasn't. Right. And they look like they 80. Bob Saget is dead. And I've never heard that story before, so that's why I'm not even repeating it. But I will give their parents credit that their parents looked out for them. I will give their parents credit for that because them girls definitely walked away financially stable. And if they never wanted to act again, they didn't have to, and they haven't. Like, I don't know. I mean, if they have done something, they probably did an indie film or something like that. But baby, that's not true, Xavier. Stop it. No, them girls been looking like they old since they were 18. Oh, Shirley Temple definitely had trauma. But again, she had to deal with, she had to deal with not being able to make that transition and Hollywood throwing her away. She had to deal with, her weight, again, the same thing, that weight. It was cute when she was a kid, but as she got older, it wasn't so cute anymore. Hell, read up on the Little Rascals. All of them had tragic lives. All of them. Spanky, Alfalfa. Hell, they couldn't even find the black kid. They don't even know if they got the real what was the black kid name on the Little Rascals? They don't even know if they found the right one. They just keep finding random black kids and they don't know if he's the right one or not. Child, all of the Little Rascals done had terrible lives. Well, that was about her image. Brandy line about getting pregnant, that was about her image. Buckwheat. How could I forget damn buckwheat? They don't even know if they done found the right buckwheat. I've looked at different, stymie and buckwheat. I looked at different documentaries. They don't even know if it's the right one. So I remember when there was an Olsen twins turn 18 countdown. Yeah, when you look back on stuff, you're like, why are we counting down to when they legal? Who's dead? What y'all talking about? But yeah, I mean, I don't know, y'all. Keenan turned out all right, but Kel got some trauma. Kel been through some stuff. I just think a lot of these kids got more stories to tell. And that, and here's the thing. You can't tell nobody when Buckwheat been dead. Do you know how old the Little Rascals is? All them niggas is dead. Child. I'm not talking about I'm not talking about the movie that came out in the 90s. I'm talking about the original black and white Little Rascals. Yeah, this industry definitely isn't for kids. It's not for kids. It's definitely not for kids. All right, y'all. Let me get out of here. Don't forget, y'all go reset, cleanse your palate, and meet us over at L Teddy's house in 30 minutes. He's gonna have a panel discussion on this. Okay. All right, y'all. I'll talk to y'all later. Peace. Of course you were confused, Xavier, because you probably thought the Little Rascals. You probably only know the movie The Little Rascals, baby. Poor thing.